Hey, everybody. I see so many familiar faces, which is really, really nice to see. And so when Shauna approached me to do the keynote for today, it was kind of a challenge. And she said, I want you to talk about, how did you grow your career? And how did you arrive in a CHRO role? And it's really interesting to take a moment and look back on how did I get here, which is how I came up with the theme for my talk of getting to now, and lessons that built an HR career. If you look at my resume or you look at my just LinkedIn experience page, it's a fairly traditional path. It says generalist, it says HR manager, it says all of the things that you're supposed to do. But you can go on LinkedIn and read that story if you want to. What I thought would be more interesting is for you to hear kind of the untold story and what really are the lessons that along the way stuck with me and kind of shaped how I practice and why I practice the way that I do, and why I stand by certain rules, because that's just what I learned along the way. So I want to share those moments with you, and kind of my challenge to you is take some time at some point over the weekend and really think about what are the lessons that are shaping your practice. So what are the encounters that you've had, not necessarily at work, but really anywhere, that shape how you show up at work, and how do you stick to that? Because I think that really becomes who we are, and will shape how you practice your own brand of HR. So if we jump in the Wayback Machine, I was raised by a high school guidance counselor and a substitute teacher. I know, you can send sympathy cards. Later, so my placement testing for careers with a high school guidance counselor father started in grade school. I'm not kidding. And so by the time I was in about 9th or 10th grade, my placement testing finally showed that I belonged in either broadcast journalism or oceanic biology. That makes perfect sense. So my father gave the sage advice that I should go to a liberal arts school because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I did that. I went to Marymount University, got a degree in liberal arts, and came out as a preschool teacher. So I was teaching Head Start, which is half preschool, kind of half social work for low-income families, and you work really closely with the families as you're bringing these kids up to speed so that they're successful when they hit grade school. So that was a great adventure, but I came to realize as it was time to start a family that for me there was no way I could pull on the same energy all day long and then go home and be a good parent. It just wouldn't work for me. I don't know how teachers do it. I knew I couldn't do it. So it was the late 90s. Everybody had a startup, and I had friends that had a startup, and they said, hey, we need an office manager. If you can corral all these preschoolers, certainly you can corral all of our adults. Well, I had no idea how similar that work would be. And it's still similar today, which is funny and sad at the same time. So I joined as, I think I was employee number 70, and that's really where my career started off. So the HR stuff, the orientation and the benefits setup and all those types of things kind of fell to the office manager, and as the company grew, so did my career. I had a background in education, and so a bunch of training fell to me. I joined the HR organization, and 15 years later, the HR goddess that you see before you. It wasn't quite that simple. And along the way, I did have a lot of lessons, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. And I did make notes, and I'll explain to you why later. All right, so that guy is my dad, and this is a phrase that he always said to us growing up. That's the way it goes, moving west. What? I have no idea what that meant, right? It seems so dismissive, right? But Dad, blah, 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 blah. That's the way it goes, moving west. And you're like, what? I don't know what you're trying to tell me. And so after a lot of beverages and conversations with my siblings, we finally figured out that the message was, it's not fair. And it's never going to be equitable, and it's going to be difficult, and there are going to be challenges along the way, and you'll figure it out. But I'm not going to give you the answer. And that always stuck with me. One, because I think it's really funny coming from a guidance counselor. I'm like, that is neither guidance nor counseling. But it really taught me, I call upon that phrase in my HR practice because that's kind of our job, right? If there was one answer for every situation and we could call upon it, companies wouldn't need us, right? But the situation is never the same. Even if it's the same attendance issue, right? If we just get down to the basics, it's never the same. And we can't always address it the same. And sometimes when you're early in your practice, we kind of have this, well, I have to apply everything really evenly, and it really doesn't work that way. Like, we want it to be fair, but it's never gonna be even. And those are two really, really different things. So I call upon this all the time. That lovely lady is my mom. Her name is Edna. So if you picture a person in your head and how Edna might behave, that's the lady. And so once, I think I was probably 9 and my little brother was 5. And he kept coming in my room and coming in my room and coming in my room, and I got sick of it and I shoved him. And so he's about this tall, and he hit a bookshelf about this height with his chin. And he bit through his tongue. There's blood everywhere. I was not worried about him at all. I was worried about me, because she was gonna kill me. I was sure of it. And so she comes running upstairs and she's like, why aren't you helping him? And I was like, because I'm scared and you're gonna make me feel guilty and blah, blah, blah. And she said, nobody makes you feel anything. You allow it. Go help your brother. And that, I kid you not, I was 9 years old, and that phrase has stuck with me to this day. And again, I call upon it all the time at work, because nobody can make me feel anything. They can't make me feel angry. They can't get a rise out of me. And when people come in your office and start venting, what do they want? They want a reaction, right? They want you to engage with them. Please jump into my pool of miserableness, right? Jump into my nightmare. The water is warm. Come with me, right? So we are in control of how we feel. And we get to decide how we feel about something and how we engage with people. So nobody makes us feel anything. I use that all the time. This is one of my favorite bosses. Her name is Cassie Keller. So I joined, after I had my daughter, after my time with the startup, I took some time off. Had my daughter and I went back to work for a subsidiary of the Home Depot. And I was the sole generalist for an acquisition when the Home Depot was building out HD Supply. And they had opened up an HR manager position because we had grown to the point where we really needed a larger staff. I applied for the role and I didn't get it. So who's been there? You apply for the job, you're right, everybody. And I got really great feedback about why I didn't get the job and kind of the skills that I needed to grow and the experience I didn't have. And the leadership did a great job of involving me with candidates. And when Cassie Keller met me for the first time, this was the first sentence out of her mouth. I couldn't wait to talk to you. She's like, you're gonna give me the real scoop. And she treated me like a peer, not like a direct report. I never ever felt like she was my boss, except for the days when she course corrected me or she delivered my performance review or whatever, but we were a team. And that has been my approach as a leader ever since. And I would hope that, so I have 2 of my team members are here today. One is Scooter McGee. That's not his real name, that's just what I call him. Because Ryan has an injury. But 2 of my folks are here today, and that was kind of the conversation we had, I think during the interview process, is I'm never gonna treat you like an employee because I need you. I can't do what you do, right? I can't recruit the way that Ryan recruits. I can't do benefits administration the way that Melinda does. I need them and their expertise. That's not my expertise, and that's not my work to do, it's theirs. And so by creating that peer respect, we get so much more done together. And we are kind of this united front instead of Kathleen and her minions. Like, ugh, that just, it doesn't even sound enjoyable to me. So that really was my lesson from Cassie. That is Ray Beresford. He is the first leadership mentor, a non-HR person that I ever worked with. So he was the operations director for the district that I worked with within the Home Depot. He came out of manufacturing pharmaceuticals to manufacturing countertops and cabinets. And that was another big lesson for me, just from a skill transference perspective, because I think sometimes from an industry perspective, and I've run into this in every industry that I've been in, well, we really need them to have, this very specific industry thing, or they won't be able to do the job. And this guy taught me, well, you're kind of smart or not. Right? It's you're either going to figure it out and learn it, or you're not. And so I think that's a challenge that every HR professional has, is really working with leadership to say, but this person's smart, and I think they'll get it. But anyway, what my takeaway from Ray, we were in our business was a residential construction, and so the installation of flooring countertops and cabinets, we were a partner to the residential builder. And the industry was really, really struggling. The market was struggling. And when you're making money hand over fist and you work for an organization like the Home Depot, wow, they're supportive. And they just leave you alone because you're making money like crazy. When that starts to dwindle, people insert themselves and into processes and things like that. And we had long conversations, and what Ray finally asked, and this does come from Good to Great, the book, which everybody's familiar with the book, right? Is what matters more, the people on the bus or where the bus is going? And so that lesson in talent, in having the right, I believe, the right people on the bus, huge lesson for me, and how important it is to have the right talent, and not only the right talent, but the right kind of engagement. Like, do you believe we're doing the right thing? And are we kind of all in it together? I don't expect people to stand around and sing Kumbaya, but we have to be a united front, especially in times when the business is struggling. And that's what this guy taught me. He's wicked smart, and now owns his own business. And it was, when that business started struggling, I really questioned, should I stay? Where do I belong? Am I going to get laid off? It was a really, really tough decision to leave. Really tough. I think because we were such a united front, I was incredibly close to my coworkers. Like, Cassie is still a friend to this day. Ray and I are still acquaintances. And so I was so close, and I would say too close, that I stayed probably longer than I should have, because I felt responsible. And I felt kind of this connection to people, that I had another lesson. Oops, not from that guy. That story's yet to come. This is Elie Weiss, and he wrote a book called Silent Nights. He is an Auschwitz survivor. And I was reading this book at the very same time, and one of the phrases in the book was, the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. Because when you love something, that takes energy. When you hate something, that takes energy. You can still be present and not have either, and have very little energy going on, but still be connected, right? So to me, indifference doesn't mean cold. It doesn't mean disconnected. It means present, but not emotionally involved. And again, this is just about my practice. This isn't, go forth and practice HR in the Brenk way, because it may not work for you. But it's what I have to do to remain healthy, and to be able to make smarter decisions, not only for the business, but for myself. And who better to teach me that than somebody who's been through quite a lot. But I guess my message to you is, it's okay for work to be just work. You can still be really driven, really involved, really care about the decisions that you make and the people at your firm and the business that your organization is involved in, but not kill yourself over it. And that's really easy to do. So it's just a cautionary tale of how connected are you, and is there, where's your line of how much connection do you allow and how much is healthy for you? So then I did decide to leave the Home Depot, and I took a full-time training job with the Dish Network. I tired of training really quickly. I'll be honest with you, I was in it for 6 months and I couldn't do it because it's very predictable. Like, I knew what I was going to be doing 6 weeks later, and when you grow up in a generalist role, that's like weird, right? You're so used to the kind of the chaos and the firefighting. I really missed that energy, and I missed that kind of urgency in the day. And so I went back to the dark side and back to the generalist world, and went to work in this guy's organizations. This is Stephen Wood, and he really took me under his wing. And who's worked at Dish? One. Okay, so Dish has a certain reputation, right? Everybody's heard all the horror stories about Dish and whatever, but there are good, smart people there, and they have a certain culture. It either works for people or it doesn't. But Stephen is really smart, sits on the board at the Wharton School at Penn. Anyway, I was talking to him one day, and I was making my first hire. It was really the first time I had hired a full-on HR person. And this is what he said to me: "Don't ever hire an HR team member who says they want to help people." And I thought, oh my God. Like, are you kidding me? And then as we talked through it, he was like, when do you feel helpful? And I was like, well, I feel helpful in this situation and that situation. And he says, okay, what about benefit enrollment? And the enrollment period's over. And 5 people come to you with their sad sob story of, I missed the deadline, blah, blah, blah. And you go, sorry? I can't help you, right? You don't feel very helpful. And I think we all probably got into HR because we did want to help people. I have sort of converted the notion of helping people to doing the right thing. So we are there to do the right thing, to balance the business and best practices and making people feel connected and helping the organization make money with the needs of the people. Right? And for me, it's in that order, but it is balancing all of those things. And doing the right thing isn't always helpful to everyone. It's helpful to the greater good. And the other thing that Stephen, he's the first person that ever put me up in front of high-powered, full-on executives and said, just be yourself. You're pragmatic, you're smart, he said shit. He said, you know your stuff, but just be yourself. And I was like, wow, these are like executives of a $14 billion company. These aren't like I've dealt with regional presidents and stuff like that, but this was the real deal. And it was so refreshing to have someone say to me, you're awesome just as you are. So remember that. Like, if you put on a face to go to work, that's okay. If that's comfortable for you, it's not comfortable for me. And so Stephen really taught me, like, show up as you, because that's what people are going to listen to, because it's going to be authentic. And he kept using the word pragmatic, which I've come to believe is a good thing. Anyway, huge lesson for me. So let's see. Laurel Ditson. Did anybody see her speak at Disrupt HR? Yes. So she is hilarious, and I chose this picture, which is from Disrupt HR. So I made the decision to leave Dish because they do some things that didn't sit well with me. I have a pretty high integrity level. I've never heard anybody be like, I really don't have any integrity. It's not really important to me. I don't know why people say like integrity is so important to me, because nobody without integrity thinks they don't have it. So one of my favorite lines from a movie, I'll say the line and then you tell me where it's from. Everybody thinks they have a sense of humor and good taste. They couldn't possibly all have them. When Harry Met Sally! Good job. If I had a prize, I'd give it to you. Yeah, when Harry Met Sally, right? Like, everybody thinks they have integrity. So anyway, that's why I left Dish, and I really felt like it was time for me to own the whole caboodle. Like, I was ready to have benefits and payroll and training and recruitment and everything. Like, I felt like I was really ready to lead a full-on team. And focused my search on best places to work. And Baxa Healthcare was a best place to work and also a top family-owned business in Colorado. And so Laurel was the VP of HR, and she hired me as the HR manager. And this sentence is about all I heard for a year. And she had that face every time she said it to me. Well, now that you're here. Right? Like, there's all this stuff to do, and now that you're here, we can do it. Now that you're here, that will happen. So it was she really empowered me to make decisions and run my team my way. I didn't run my team her way, because she was a very different leader than I was, but she let me do it the way that I thought was best. The other thing that Laurel taught me was using data to tell HR's story. She made me collect data, she made me use it, she made me have metrics, and it's something I talk to my team about all the time, is where are the numbers? Like, we cannot just go in front of a board of directors or a team of executives and say, oh, just trust me. It's the right thing to do, right? We have to have data to back it up. And I thought that Ashley Salino was going to be here, who is currently the HR manager for EnviroTest. She worked for me at Baxa, and she and I came up with this broad spreadsheet to start tracking employee relations issues. And so anytime we had a conversation with someone that lasted longer than 15 minutes, we logged it in a spreadsheet to look at what department is it, what issue is it, and what does that look like, so that over time we could see, like, where do our issues lie? Is it a leadership issue? Is it a work issue? What is it? And Ashley's so smart that after we did this for about 6 months and we really started crunching our data, and it looked like we had a bunch of issues in the warehouse with one supervisor, it wasn't an issue. It was that supervisor was coming to us incredibly proactively, and he was a really, really good supervisor. So then we started tracking, are people coming to us proactively or reactively, and who's doing it really well and who's not. And keeping spreadsheets is a pain, but it's all we had. So we just made it work. But to be able to go to department VPs and go, here are the ER issues in your world, and here's why we're recommending this kind of training and this kind of activity and this and that and the other thing, because we had data to go with. And that's what Laurel taught me. So when these two hear me say, where's the data? Like, I need to see what your numbers are, that's where that comes from, because then we're intelligent people leaders, right? We're a member of the business and we're speaking the language of the business. That's what's really, really important. So while I was at Baxa, you'll notice that one of these things, okay, maybe two, look different today than they did back then. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2011, and this is the team of people that kind of got me through that. And this is one of the most, so I blog often on LinkedIn. If you're a frequenter of my blog, thank you. And one of the most read blogs that I wrote was How Your Career is Like Cancer, which is a catchy title, right? So it makes people click on it anyway. But I really, in hindsight, and Beth's laughing, in hindsight, I really learned so many lessons from that I do apply every day to how I manage my career, and I wanted to share that with you. So surrounding yourself with smart people. When I was diagnosed, I had to find a surgeon, I had to find a plastic surgeon, and I had to find an oncologist. And so finding doctors, it's like finding employees or finding the right team or the right leadership team. Like, I want to make sure I'm comfortable with people, that I can engage in an intelligent conversation and aren't going to just give me the answer or not listen to my concerns or expect me to follow the rules all the time, because I'm not really a rule follower, and wasn't in this instance either. Also having a great network. That's why you're here, right? Is you're trying to build that network of peers, of seasoned professionals. Maybe you're a seasoned professional. I'll say for me, one of the reasons I want to get involved in this group is outside of the team that I have today, I don't really know younger age, and I don't mean younger in age, but younger in career HR professionals. I just don't. And as my career grows, I need to hire those people. And so I need to know you so that, you know, as my people grow up and move on and do amazing, wonderful things, like I need to have a network of talent to draw from. And listening to, and my network is obviously these fine ladies over here that really got me through an incredibly difficult time. And you can see there's Cassie Keller, if she looks familiar. And I know all of these folks, almost all of them from work. Do I have a... Oh, drunk with power, the laser pointer. Okay, this is Deb Wiest. She was my very first boss at the startup. This is Jen Ostrom. We worked together at Dish. That's Sarah. She did payroll at the Home Depot. This is Jen. She also worked with me at the startup. These two I know from some consulting I did with Centura, technical writer that I worked with at the startup, and boss. So never burn a bridge. Like, the people that you feel good about, keep them in your life, because you never know when you're going to need them. So listening to your gut, while I just said use data, confirm your data with your gut. You're going to know what is the right thing. And data can confirm your gut, or your gut can confirm data, but it really, really matters. I made some decisions that didn't make sense to other people. I decided to have a double mastectomy instead of a lumpectomy and radiation. I decided to stop taking a drug that I'm supposed to take, but where's Cami? So in the midst of this journey, I accepted a job with Cami Redpath, who's going to be on the panel later. And then I developed a blood clot from the medication that I was taking and was petrified, because a blood clot's going to kill you a hell of a lot sooner than cancer is. So I turned down that job because I just wanted to stay where I was and make sure that I had time off and, you know, all that good stuff. So anyway, everything works out for a reason, and here we are today. This funny, funny world. Anyway, a positive attitude will get you through absolutely anything, and I believe that at work too. And I think that's kind of our role, is not to be polypositive and kind of be fake about our optimism, but people are watching you. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the impact that you have that sometimes you're not even aware of. But your positivity matters. I went through a series of surgeries to the specimen that you see before you. And my plastic surgeon, the first surgery went really, really well, and I did fine. And so I said, you know, I did really well in the first surgery. Is that any indication of how I'll do in the second? And he said, no. I was like, oh, thanks there, Doogie. He said, the reason that you did so well in the first surgery has everything to do with here up and nothing to do with here down. And so and I was like, oh, I knew I picked the right doctor, right? Because I totally believe that. And we can have that same impact at work. And then seeing everything as a lesson. Like, we have to make really tough decisions at work, whether it's layoffs, how are we going to handle situations, you get the dreaded letter from the EEOC, whatever it is. But seeing everything as a lesson and taking it in, like, how can I make the best of this? How can I get the best out of it? How can I do the best for the organization? It raises you out of the panic of the moment to a different, very different place. Because your job's tough. Like, I totally get it. All right. The Brotherhood of the Miserable, they are always recruiting. So this is my former CEO at my last gig, where I was Vice President of People and Culture at Trust Company of America. He just resigned this week, which is really sad for them, because he's amazing. This is David Barry. Did anybody see him speak at Disrupt? He's a great, amazing, amazing leader. Super positive, high energy, and this is my biggest takeaway from him. And again, it's not getting sucked into someone else's drama and sort of not allowing it in your organization. So we didn't allow the Brotherhood of the Miserable, and those people, we kind of had three buckets of turnover. We had voluntary, involuntary, and sorry, not sorry. Right? And you can go, it's fine. because the Brotherhood is always looking for new recruits, and staying away from that is really, really hard. I have kind of my own Brink's theory of the conference room. Would you like to hear it? Okay. So Brink's theory of the conference room is if you take 3 completely unconnected people in an organization, leave them alone in a conference room for 10 minutes and come back, someone will be bitching about something. It doesn't matter who they are, that's just how it works, right? And it's somewhere, there's something in our human nature that makes us like, I know, right, me too. And so being the person that rises above that, really, really key. And really, really funny to watch people's reaction when you're like, really, I don't feel that way at all. And they go, well, then what are we gonna talk about? Right? Yeah, that's my pal DB. All right, so lessons from me to you. And I didn't make this up. This is actually a marketing piece that I got in the mail from some leadership company once I took the gig, which I thought it was brilliant. We're moving offices, so that's gonna be my name tag in my new office. So lessons from me to you. I just wrote a whole blog about how did I find this gig in 90 days because I knew it was time for me to leave my previous firm. And you can go online and read that. But some stories I want to tell you personally about how I got here and kind of how I maintain a level of authenticity that frankly I'm really, really proud of, is you have an impact that you will never fully understand with people. So this is my pal Jason, and that's the two of us. He lives in San Francisco now. And how am I doing on time? What time is it? Okay. So I'm going to try and make this story brief, but to me it's hilarious, and as HR professionals you'll find it really funny. So I'm sitting at the chef's counter at one of my favorite restaurants downtown with a girlfriend. I had just started at Baxa. I had an HR generalist that was not working out, and he was about to be let go. I was going to let go one of my employees. And I'm telling her the story and blah, 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 and not 30 seconds after she says to me, you should probably be careful about talking about this in public. And I'm like, really, who's gonna know? I'm gonna use a fake name, Bob. And I kid you not, this was our server, who I knew like just because I went to this restaurant all the time. And he goes, you mean gay Bob that works in HR? And I went, and right, my reaction should have been, what? Instead it was, and I was like, you cannot say, I'm like, do you know him? And I swear, this is what he says, I'm gay, we all know each other. And I'm like, oh God. So I go, you cannot say anything. Like what? Like, I will be your new best friend. And he goes, flowers and chocolate. Your secret's safe with me. And I kid you not, the next day I had flowers and chocolate delivered to the restaurant, and he never spilled the beans. And well, I kid you not, we've been friends ever since. So I went to visit him shortly after my surgeries and stuff were all done a few years ago. It was 2012. And I am a New Year's resolution person, but it's usually not about weight loss or anything about like that. It's usually a behavior change that I feel like I really need to work on. And my resolution that year was do nothing out of obligation. I was kind of hanging on to some friendships that I felt obligated to, but they weren't serving me. So just from a personal perspective, like that was my thing. He called me November of last year. So 2.5 years later, he called me and he said, remember that thing that you told me about do nothing out of obligation? I'm applying that to my life. He like quit his job, completely switched careers and like made all of these changes in his life just because I told him like some silly story about something that I did. And so that same thing will happen to you at work. So you will have an impact on people that you'll never fully understand. I've run into people that I've sat in on their termination, and they've told me what a difference it made in their life. That it was exactly what they needed. And yes, it was time, and that in retrospect, right, blah, blah, blah. And they weren't angry to see me because I treated them with respect, and we knew we were doing the right thing. So those things will happen to you, especially if in this town. I feel like this town gets smaller by the day. So just remember that and treat everybody respectfully and avoid talking about your people issues at restaurants. Never forget where you came from. This is my crazy family. So who can pick out me? I'm not even going to ask you to do that. That's me right there. I look shy, right? It's funny. That picture cracks me up. Anyway, this is my gran. She passed away a few years ago. She lived to be 93. And she was incredibly proper, like Pittsburgh money, went to finishing school. She sent us to finishing school. It didn't entirely take. But I would do like crazy, silly things as a kid, and she would just have this throaty chuckle because she was a smoker for years and years. She had this throaty chuckle, and she would always go, "Oh, Kathy," because she called me Kathy. And I never forget that. I never forget my parents. This is one of my tattoos. Oh, that's the story I forgot to tell you. So Stephen Wood, the Dish SVP, he used to call me dark-haired tattooed girl. Before he knew my name. Like people would say, well, you should get Kathleen involved in that. Is that dark-haired tattooed girl? Nice, right? So anyway, this is a tattoo I got from my parents. That's my daddy's initials, and Edna, because she's infamous, and that's my birth date. And so when I say never forget where you came from, it's not just about your family and your childhood. Never forget when you made $30,000 and couldn't afford to buy more than a 4-pack of toilet paper. Really and truly, because those people work somewhere in your organization, and it's really, really easy to be like, well, if they can't manage their money and that $20 error on their paycheck, blah, 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 right? At some point, you were floating a check at Safeway, right? You were finding the ATM that you knew you could get $5 out of because that's all the money that you had. Never, ever forget that, because you're going to grow amazing, wonderful careers. You're going to come to a point in your career where you don't really have to worry about money, but someone in your organization does. And be really respectful of that. Be present. This is my baby. Well, she's not a baby, so that's her now. Obviously, she's 13. And so what she has taught me to be really present, be in the moment, which I am not good at. I'm very future focused. I'm very driven. I'm never satisfied with anything that's going on. I always think it can be better. I always think I can be better, that I can do more. And she makes me be like right here. She makes me be right there. You don't have to have a kid to do that, right? Your dog can do that. You can teach yourself to do it. It just took her to teach me how to do it. Being in the moment is so important to what we do, because nothing is more distracting or not modeling the way than when an employee comes in and we're on our phone, we're on Link or Skype or whatever we're doing, or we're on our computer, or we look at our phone when it rings. The most important person is sitting in front of you. And when you treat the call center rep, the custodian, the whoever in your organization makes $10 an hour, is just as important and deserves exactly the same treatment from you as the CEO or the CHRO or whoever, right? I talk to those people in exactly the same tenor, with exactly the same language as I do anybody else, because that's me and that's how I show up. But it's being present in that moment and making sure that those people are getting my undivided attention. That's what really makes me as an HR practitioner. My last sort of lesson from me to you in how I've grown my career is be really clear in your brand. So I Googled myself, and I did not edit any of this information. And here's what came up. Pictures that I'm not ashamed of, always a plus. You know. So my other advice is lock down your Facebook. Like 100%. I'm not friends with anyone on Facebook other than my friends. Like there are no work people whatsoever. Again, that's me. You manage your life how you want to, but Googling yourself is part of your brand, because what comes up is what people are gonna see. So again, pictures that I'm fine with. Some diversity council stuff, my Twitter account, my Disrupt HR video, and a press release about me joining Recondo. So I'm really, really clear about how I want to show up at work and the kind of organization I want to work for and the kind of people that I want to work with. I'll tell you a quick story about my current CEO. So The chief HR officer role at Recondo was posted January? January or like early, let's say February. I think it was early February. And I had like that day at work. I had been talking to my CEO for a long time about, I think it might be time for me to go, and we were both kind of struggling, and I was really lucky to be able to have that relationship with my past CEO, that I could have that really honest conversation. And I just had that day that I actually paid my $25, went on the ladders of all places, and saw the job posted and started doing my LinkedIn digging around, looking, do I know anybody there? Does anybody I know anybody there? I went and looked, his name is Jay, went and read Jay's profile. About 30 minutes after I read Jay's profile, he hit me up for a connection because he saw that I looked at him, and so he went and looked at me, and he hit me up for a connection. I sent him a note saying, thanks, I might be the right girl for your gig. I used exactly those words because that's how I talk. And we had breakfast a couple weeks later, and when we sat down, he said, you know, your brand is really strong, and it's super clear how you choose to kind of practice your profession. How do you balance that with a corporate culture? And in my head, I was like, oh, yay, he gets it, first of all. And my answer was, well, if I can't balance it with a corporate culture, then I don't belong there. Like, why would I want to work somewhere that isn't looking for me? You know, you can look for great HR. It's all across this room, right? But we don't all fit everywhere. And my brand of HR doesn't work at every company, and that's okay. And so the rest is history, and there I am. So, and now we work together. But really think about, who do you want to be? And does what you put out into the social world really tell that story? And how are you engaging in that? Because it really does matter. And my last thought, which I love this so much, Jordan Belfort, everybody knows from Wolf of Wall Street, right? The only thing standing between you and your goal is the story you keep telling yourself as to why you can't achieve it. There's absolutely nothing stopping you. Whether you want to be the next CHRO or you want to be the rockinest generalist for the length of your career, either one of those things is perfectly awesome. So that's my time. I am at KK Brenk on Twitter, if you're so interested in following or checking that out or whatever, and I'm Kathleen Brenk on LinkedIn. So I'm happy to answer questions, whatever you want to ask.
Comment. You can say bullshit. It's fine.
Well, we're being recorded, so. Anyway. Yes, ma'am.
What makes your culture so much different than the others?
What makes the culture at Recondo different than the others? You know, every place that I've worked has had an interesting culture. I think the culture of Recondo, our leadership team, with the exception of the CFO, have all been there less than like 7 months. So it's brand new. So it's a big shakeup for the organization. We also implemented TQM in February. So total quality management. So it's very results focused. We're weakness based. We talk really openly and honestly about things that are not going well. The CEO shares his most important tasks, his MITs. I have MITs, Ryan has MITs, and we're held to that. Like, we meet quarterly, and every single person talks about their MITs and where they are against them and sets them for every quarter. So that kind of results-based culture really works for me. We don't suffer victims very well. That also works really well for me. So that being that results focused, we are trying to make it more fun, because that matters to people, right? It's connecting. When you have fun at work, frankly, from a business perspective, you're apt to stay longer. Not only longer in the day, but longer tenure. Right? You're going to stick somewhere that feels good. So that's sort of our goal is how do we make it more fun, but balance it really with our results-focused culture. Yeah? Do I think it's important to have a social presence as an HR practitioner, or is that just me? I think it's important as an HR practitioner. I really do. And there's a balance of representing yourself and representing the organization. right? So because behind my name, it says CHRO at Recondo Technology. So I think that's why finding a place where your brand matches the culture and the brand of the organization, having that really well melded is important. Because if I show up as me and my CEO reads something that I wrote and goes, what the hell were you thinking? Right? That's not really going to work. The latest thing that I blogged, I actually told a story about Jay, and then Jay responded to it and said, hey, I'm the CEO in this scenario, and we're really happy to have Kathleen. So I do think it's really important, especially as you're growing a career. Because just as much as you're out there looking at companies and deciding where you want to work, they're doing exactly the same thing. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
In addition to your education overall in college, what other types of education or certifications do you think are really important for young professionals to get under their belt to really push your career?
Yeah, I went through a Green Belt Six Sigma program when I was at the Home Depot, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It was so hard. Honestly, because there's a actually, the Home Depot has their own black belts that teach it, but I had to do, I kid you not, my project for graduating from the program was to reduce the amount of scrap tile. Right? Oh, sure. I can do that. So, but it does it, that focus on data and telling that story, and it goes against everything you kind of learn in business school, which I obviously didn't go to, but the whole Stephen Covey thing of start with the end in mind goes against everything that Six Sigma is about. Six Sigma is about, no, you start at the start. You don't start with the end in mind. You're going to start at the beginning, and the story will tell itself as you gather data. So that's really one of the hardest things I did. So I think any time that you can engage in process improvement that gets you involved in the business and out of quote unquote HR, super, super important. So getting on project teams at work that don't really have to do with HR is really great. I have my SPHR, I have my SHRM SCP. I think those things are important because one, it shows your dedication to the field, to other HR professionals, but it's also a great test of your knowledge and where do you sit. And you have to have that background. You can think everything you want to think, but there are best practices out there, and you have to be able to pick and choose what is it that works for your organization. Yeah, for me, the most important thing has been getting out of HR and really learning to speak the language of the business. Does that answer your question? Okay. What else? Yes, ma'am.
In your career, did you ever switch from a smaller company to a much bigger company? And were there any kind of major lessons you learned from moving from a small employee group to a bigger one?
So her question was, have I ever experienced going from a really small employee group to a much larger employee group? My first generalist foray was at the startup, and like I said, I joined, I was number like 70, and when I left, I was laid off. We had like 500 employees. We were acquired by Charter Communications. After that, I went to the Home Depot, and while our subsidiary size was about the same, of 500 employees, obviously the Home Depot is 350,000 employees, so I get $80 billion business. So for me, at that time in my career, it was awesome to get really great HR practices, and it was kind of a GE house because we had past GE leadership at the helm. So we got really awesome people practices to play with. But like I said, we were making so much money, they just left us alone. They were like, here, go do this. But they gave us really great tools. So that was really awesome. But then going from there to a corporate office at Dish, that was eye-opening. That was really eye-opening because I had been on the field side, right? I was the one going corporate, making us do, right? If you've been in a field office, you do that, right? So to be the one at corporate going, no, that's not, that's not really what we meant, but we kind of said that, yeah, sorry. So having been on both sides of that ship has been really, really great. And it also taught me where I belong. I don't belong in huge corporations. It just doesn't fit me. So that 500 employee or smaller, I actually love the 200 employee space because you got to get your hands dirty. There's no opportunity for me to sit on high and say, go do talent management. Like I'm doing the talent management, right? But that's good with me because I want to work. I like strategy and then implementation. But again, that's my preference. So I would encourage you to challenge yourself to be in different places, like understand the field, understand corporate, and then you can make smart choices about where are you more comfortable, what feels good to you. Yeah.
I wanted to know if there was a specific author or a recent book that you read that you would recommend.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm not a good business book reader. I feel like every management book is like the 1 Minute Manager has been like put in the laundry and then it came out with a new cover. But that's not true for everyone. Like I know people that are really, really big fans. I will tell you the one book that I've read recently that had a huge impact on me is called The Purpose Economy. It's written by Aaron Hurst, H-U-R-S-T. He's the former CEO of Taproot, which is a grassroots philanthropy, professional philanthropy team. But anyway, the premise of The Purpose Economy is that we've gone from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy to the age of technology, and that the next economic sort of situation of our country will be the purpose economy, ride sharing, very community driven. That people are looking for purpose, people are looking for connection, and by purpose that doesn't mean cause, right? The checkout person at Target can have a purpose. If that individual understands that their purpose is to make a 90-second interaction with you enjoyable, that's purpose, right? And it just spoke to me as an HR professional because, God, if we can give people that, people will stick. That makes a culture sticky, is when I feel connected, right? I feel like what I do has purpose. And that doesn't mean I'm like curing cancer, no pun intended, but yeah, that book really spoke to me. I love that. And there's cartoons in it, which, that's always good. Anybody else? Going once? In under the wire.
Yeah. I always feel like I learn the most from someone who does something very poorly, like a manager who makes a bad decision. Do you have an example like that you could share?
When I've done something really poorly? Because I have those stories.
Well, take your pick, but like something that was really negative that you were able to turn into a positive lesson moving forward.
Sure. Yeah, I can I can tell you both in one time. So his comment in question was he learns a lot from either other people's mistakes, and sometimes when somebody does something really poorly, you can walk away from that from a lesson. I always say that with parenting. I was like, I didn't go into parenting knowing what to do, but having come out of Head Start, I knew what not to do. So we'll see, she's 13. But anyway, so my story of lessons learned from not exactly the best circumstances is when I made the decision to not take the job with Cammie after my cancer. We were in the process of being acquired by Baxter Healthcare, monstrous company, right? 50,000 employees, global organization. And Laurel Ditson, who I showed the picture of, had made the decision to leave. Because when you're a VP of a company with 700 employees, you get absorbed by a company of 50,000, your job's gonna change. And she just wasn't interested kind of in that journey. I would say this if she was sitting right here, because she and I have talked about it since. She did not handle that transition in the most professional way. She had been there for 10 years. Like, it was the total of her career. It felt very personal. It was her family. And so she didn't handle it well. She decided to leave. I was asked a lot of questions about Laurel and her leadership and by the CEO of BAXA, which I shared that with him, and I didn't share that feedback with Laurel. And I wish I had done that. And I have since, but that really needed to be a three-way conversation, not a two-way conversation with that person sitting there going, wait a minute, what just happened? Right now Kathleen has my job, and I'm like, I don't even know what just happened. So having open and honest conversations, even when it's difficult, really is a lesson that I took from that. And it's one of the reasons that I joined TCA. And I talked about this during my last Disrupt talk, is Trust Company of America has a corporate value of one culture, and part of that value is that we're loyal to the absent. Meaning, if you and I are having a conversation and your name comes up, we're bringing you in. Like, unless you're shaking out how to have the conversation with her, that's different. But you got to suck it up. You got to man up or woman up or whatever, and have the tough conversation. So that really was my takeaway from that.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? We'll try it again. Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you, good night.